But good morning, everybody. 8 a.m. on our bi-weekly DAACAT call. We are happy to have each and every one of you here. We are going to move through a lot of information very quickly today. We know that it is a beautiful spray day and you guys have a lot going on. But our full agenda, we'll start with our regular trivia question. We are going to move into corn rootworm, 'tis the season. Nitrogen response, Jim will cover that. And then Dustin will cover a little bit about some post-herbicide items. Jim will cover the accelerated growth syndrome, and then I'll finish with a little bit of weather outlook and what is a super El Nino and what are we going to look at going forward for the next month as we think about spray time and the disease outlook. So I know, guys, there's still a lot of people coming in, but trivia question of the day. What base temperature do we use for GDU calculations for corn rootworm hatch? Jim, I'll be relying on you to watch the chat here.
Mm-hmm. Nora, I'm so glad you're going to give us the forecast for the rest of the summer.
Oh, well, you know what I mean.
I'm going to hold you to it too. It's a recording, so we're going to check back and see if you're right.
Oh, this is why people have presentation anxiety now. We
have receipts.
We have, yes. I can check that off my list. We have some top participation answerers. Does anybody gotten our trivia question?
Nothing yet.
I haven't seen anything.
I saw Dave was on here. I have high expectations.
Yeah, maybe some of these perennial winners are giving others a chance.
Oh, well, that's right. Well,
should I already won 3 times this year.
Yep, and there's another one.
Yep. Base temperature for GDU calculations for corn rootworm hatch, we're actually going to use 52 degrees. So for crops, we do use a base 50. For weeds, we use a base 48. But for corn rootworm hatch, we're actually going to use a base 52. And that's one of the reasons that you can see different GDUs. We do that in the newsletter. We cover GDUs. We look at soil temperatures. And depending on the source that you're looking at, you could be like, why don't these match? Part of that calculation is using the base temperature. And that means that below that temperature, the organism is not making any progress. The molasses is not flowing. So for corn rootworm, we're going to use base 52. But Jim, do you want to cover your slide for GDU accumulations? Did you have any particular points you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, you bet. Well, first of all, this might be a record for the number of correct answers. We got 4 of them. Not only Kaya, but Pierce Jensen, Rick Henning, and Dustin Hagedorn all had correct answers, and all of them were right there at 802, but it ranks them by order, doesn't it, Dustin? So got to give it to Kaya again.
That is right.
Quick on the trigger finger. Yeah, as far as GDUs, no surprise, but we are running ahead, and mainly on the benefit of last week's heat, and not just the high temperatures during the day, but a lot of nighttime lows that stayed upper 60s, close to 70s. So that's really where we rack up those GDUs. But for really all those windows, kind of the basic planting windows that we've had this spring, running ahead, especially from that first window or the earlier window, the 11th of April, 88 ahead of the long-term average. And by the way, I start looking at some of the projections, which is kind of like the top 25 for football the day after the national championship, the way too early. But some of the projections based on historical averages of GDUs accumulation going forward, starting to put that tassel date right around July 4th, depending on where you're at, depending on maturity, all those factors. But I would not doubt it if we see a tassel by the 1st of July, unless we suddenly turn around and cool things down, which hopefully we don't. Like I've always said, and others have said, above normal GDUs before reproductive stage is almost always a good thing. So it's nice to see us running ahead. And then on the soil GDUs, and Nora had mentioned it. She's going to get into a few more details, but I did check this morning at the Alley Research Farm at Newell. just by comparison, because I was curious, how do we compare to previous years? So just from last year, we're 105 ahead of the long-term average, of last year's average.
Cool.
Running ahead on soil GDUs, which is part of the reason that we certainly wanted to hit on that topic, being as that affects our insects, especially corn rootworm. And just as a reminder, we know we're developing corn leaves fairly quickly now, about every 3 days, roughly, 3 to 4 days. And then once we get past V10, the accumulation even happens faster as far as those leaf stages. It only takes 50 GDUs to develop a new leaf. So like we've mentioned, as before we got started, we're going to see canopy, narrow rows that I was by yesterday, easily canopying. So we're going to have some corn canopy over this next week, and that's fun to see in the first week of June.
It really is. Things are starting to look beautiful. One thing that we're going to need to watch, and I'm going to skip through a little bit of my slides here, is as this beautiful corn keeps progressing and we keep having this heat, just like Jim said, we're watching for our pest accumulation. So the next thing on our list for pests that could be impacting this wonderful crop that we have is corn rootworm. We want to bring this to your attention. I'm not sure if we can give an extra point, but if anyone throws it in the chat in the next 30 seconds, how many GDUs to reach peak hatch in Iowa for corn rootworm? This is something that we track from January 1. This is a cumulative number. And here's the life cycle, right? We're overwintering from last year, from those adults that came out of our corn crop, or potentially 2 years ago in extended diapause. We're reaching the heat units required, and then the larvae begin to feed on the roots. So when we're looking at our current time, we're sitting at the end of May, beginning of June, and we are reaching that key time frame of 684 to 767 heat units. I can confirm that the last 2 nights at my house in Lakeview, Iowa, I have seen lightning bugs. So there's just your double check, right? That the math is correct. So this is something that I pulled yesterday morning. Here is how we are sitting in the state for GDU accumulation from January 1 for base 52. We can see that our teammates down south are very ahead of a normal pace. In comparison, Jim shared that we are ahead compared to last year, but when I was digging through these charts, the only year that I found in the last 20 that was quicker to 700 heat units soil GDUs was 2012. Many years we were in the 500 range, some even 400 for this time frame. We are definitely hundreds, I would say, of heat units ahead of what our recent memory would be. We want to bring this to your attention because as the corn rootworms begin to hatch, as they begin to feed, they all have 3 instar stages. And I like using this picture because it shows all 3. They're very small right now. They're about 1/8 of an inch. They will progress every 7 to 10 days through one of these instar stages. They will begin to feed on roots, and we can see some of the feeding here. The data that I've seen suggests that they can move about 1.5 feet from their hatching point, which means they're going to run into a corn row, right? We're not having corn plants much farther than that from any given point in a field. So fields that you might want to begin thinking about, heavy corn on corn fields, right? We want to be double checking that. We want to be thinking any extended diapause fields. Put that in the back of your head. I know for Sac County and like Northern Crawford County, this is our extended diapause year. On even years, we can have some fields that have had some corn issues that need to be traded. And when you're thinking of these fields going forward of what you want to, how you want to support your growers, how you want to double check, I encourage you to do some float tests. This is something that you can call your sales agronomist for as well for help. But just a bucket of water, a shovel, and a corn plant. That's all you need. No specialized tools, no real specialized training. God took pity on us when we have this underground pest and he said, but wait, I'm going to make them float. So if you put the root mass down in there, let it soak just a few minutes, and gently shake it like in this picture, those larvae will float to the surface. You can see this tiny picture here, as well as I actually had to use my camera to verify that this was moving years ago. So that and this was a phone or two ago. So the cameras that we have on our phones can really help us kind of magnify and see what we're seeing. But we want to make sure that you guys know about this, because we do have some fields that maybe have some compromised roots already. I did not have, at least in my territory, I did not have much ammonia burn this year. Last year, that was a thing. But we do have some sidewall compaction, right? We had some furrows that didn't close completely. We have maybe some other stressors going on. And anytime, or lack of rain, right? We're a little dry. Anytime that feeding occurs, that on roots that are already stressed, that can exacerbate the stress. And even with a Smart Stacks Pro or VT4 Pro, rootworm larvae need to feed on the root still to ingest the protein for it to be lethal to control that pest. So we don't expect you to see zero feeding. You'll see a little here and there. You should not have anything that we're actually losing full nodes. And we'll cover that later into the year. We don't expect to see any dramatic rootworm feeding right after hatch, but more when we get to that third instar stage, that larger larvae. So there's not any options that we can do for corn rootworm control at this point in time, other than identifying those high pressure fields, taking that note, because that's really key to know when we're planting seed for next year, to make sure we're using the appropriate traits. Or maybe a guy is deciding whether or not he needs in-furrow insecticide. Maybe he's wavering whether his silage field could be switched to somewhere else. Those are options that we need to look at. And then we also could do beetle management. So Dustin and Jim, do you have anything else to add as we come into corn rootworm season with the beginning of hatch?
Yeah, no, all good points, Nora. These are great in-season touch points for our growers, especially our growers that are extensively managing corn on corn, but also extended diapause. I know, Nora, you mentioned Sac County, but I know over the years too, we have this hot pocket of extended diapause kind of in BV County, right around Storm Lake through Alta. I've walked a lot of fields over the years that we've seen some extended diapause. So again, great in-season touch point for our growers and help them manage this pest.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree. And, you mentioned 2012, obviously warm, dry year, ahead on GDUs. So that gave the rootworm a chance to get some size, maybe before the roots were very big or before we had full protein expression from the BT traits. So we could be in that scenario again. We'll see what the rains do over the next several days. But it is such a key thing to survival as far as the conditions at the time of hatch. And they're in the egg stage, they can handle all kinds of saturated soils and lack of oxygen. But once they hatch out, they do need oxygen. So if we're dry, that increases the survival considerably. So that's a key factor in really what kind of pressure we're going to have coming up over the next couple of years. 2024 wet year, I think we certainly drowned a lot of them out, and that was reflected last year too, a relatively light year on average. But this year, based on our beetle counts from last year and just the conditions so far and the GDUs, looking to be a little heavier as of right now.
We will keep an eye on it. And if you guys have any questions about float tests or things like that, just give one of us a call. But Jim, do you want to go into nitrogen response?
Yeah, you bet. Been getting this question, and obviously nitrogen is kind of under the microscope because of the costs, especially some of the in-season costs. If some of the nitrogen was not booked pre-season, really there's been data both internally, and then we have some external partners that do some hybrid by nitrogen response. And I would say it's never perfect. We know every product needs nitrogen. We never want to short anything. But sometimes if we're making those decisions on, I can only get to one field, or I'm only going to side dress one field, or make sure I've got the nitrogen available, those products on the left there would be ones that we've seen high response, either from the standpoint of yield and maybe they really suffer because of lack of nitrogen late season. They really need that late season kernel depth or ear fill, or just from a standability. 5982, I'll mention that one. Great product. It tends to cannibalize the stalk, especially if it's short on nitrogen. So we really want to make sure that has enough nitrogen to finish the season because of the standability. We've got a few products in there that are brand new. So we have limited data, but the early indications on 107.69, 112.35, 117.89 are all pointing towards the fact that they are higher responders to nitrogen. And then on the right side, see some of the lower responders. Again, not products we want to blatantly short with nitrogen, but if we're making those decisions, maybe we can get by with a little bit less. And then, of course, a lot of products that are not listed will be landing right in the middle. So if we are making some of those decisions on which fields to add additional N, so far, haven't seen any figures. I was checking on that yesterday, but it's a little too early. I got to believe our nitrogen mineralization rates are decent. It varies by area. Some of these areas that have had the 5-6 inches of rain, that might be a different story. But a lot of areas, we've got warmer soils, higher GDUs, and some, frequent moisture, smaller showers. So that usually leads towards higher N mineralization rates. But, just food for thought. We'll know more about that as we go in the next several weeks.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Dustin, how about we roll into a couple things about post herbicides?
Yeah, I guess we wanted to have a couple conversations around post-corn applications. Obviously, had a great week last week. We've had a good week this week as well. Hopefully, we're wrapping up a lot of these applications. But again, we're spraying a lot of growth regulators, hopefully a safe end product like Diflex. So we just wanted to call it out again. We're up to V10, 36-inch or 36-inch tall corn. Probably don't want to push that label as we look at the unsafe end products, be it Sterling Blue, Rifle, Clarity. We're probably right at that in a lot of areas, especially in this early planted corn, that we need to cut that off. And then again, we are rating some hybrids on sensitivity to growth regulators. A lot of those new products that were released last year, the launch class 103.63, 107.11, 107.69 are a caution. And as I think of it, we are seeing a lot more activity, even with Diflex this year. I've gotten several pictures, calls that corn's being a little lazy, a little wrapped up, but then you think about how this crop has progressed, especially last week. Had a great spray week, V2, V3 corn, great time to be spraying it. But you have a combination of really rapid growth. We got a nice drink, had really warm temperatures. Corn's just taken off. And then with that as well, I don't know, as we look at the whole mix of our spray solution, be it we got probably group 15s in there as well, and maybe some more oils. And then you throw Diflex in there. We are probably seeing a little bit more crop response on certain products and even products that are not a caution. So just with the rapid growth we had last week, plus an application of a growth regulator, even if it was safe, and we are seeing a little bit of crop response. But just want to call that out. We are up against it. We've been pushing to use safe and products, but if we're looking for unsafe and products, we're pretty well cut off. Go ahead go ahead, Jim.
Nope, just great point.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. And then the next one, do want to call out, obviously, we've thrown in a lot of group 27s, Lotus, mostly all the HPPD products. We're at a V8 height restriction on that. Liberty, we're bumping up against it. I threw some pictures in here because we are spraying more and more Liberty in corn, and we have to watch out those late applications of Liberty. It has a V6 label. These pictures were taken from a field last summer that was probably sprayed closer to about V9 time frame. Flashed it really hard and was hoping it was more just going to be a yellow flash early and not affect ear development, but we had a lot of problems with arrested ear in this field and probably cost the grower upwards of 60 bushel on this particular farm. So just want to call that out as we're spraying more Liberty in corn, that its height restriction is V6.
That's a great call out. Anything, keep calm and read the label. I have a shirt that says that, and I feel like I could wear it every day. But guys, these off-label restrictions, there's a reason. When we get to the beginning of that reproductive system, that we don't just put things on labels for our health, right, guys? Like there's reason.
Correct.
Yeah, great points. And of course, when we're talking Liberty, always can't remind people enough that it's only Smart Stacks Pro, and you be smart with Liberty. So to go along with what you've been talking about, Dustin, these would actually be from last year, but safe and dicamas, and you talk about crop response. I'm okay with seeing crop response because usually that means it's going to be active on the weeds, and we want dead weeds. We can handle a few days of crop response, especially if it's just some of the twisting, lazy. Not unusual to see that, particularly with the high humidity and heat. But then same field, just about a week later, pretty well recovered and takes off. Go ahead, Nora. And then sometimes this time of the year, and we're starting to see it again, accelerated growth syndrome, and gets a little hard to separate out. Has that same rat tail look as what dicamba formulations can. This particular picture was from a field that hadn't had anything sprayed post-emerge, but get those good growing conditions, starts to take off, just wraps. Certainly hybrid differences as well. So we can see some hybrids side by side. One will do it and the other one won't. And then a few days later or a week later, we'll see that yellow flash as those leaves start to unwrap. But personally, I've never seen anything long-term affect yield and anything like that. And then also just again talk about crop response, and this is also from last year, but kind of had the whole kit and caboodle thrown at it between harness, Roundup, Lautus, Diflex, Atrazine, sprayed relatively early on a early planted field, and you can see how tough it can look, but then the progression, it's amazing how well it can recover. And knowing that we're starting to form our kernels around at about V5, V6, it's nice to have that spraying wrapped up by then, no matter what we're doing. Especially if we're starting to really get some of that yellow flash in the whirl. So hopefully we've got enough of a window that we're going to be wrapping up these corn post sprays soon.
I hope so as well. So guys, in our last few minutes, we are going to talk just a little bit about weather. I get a lot of I'm a weather nerd. I get a lot of questions and conversations about weather. And so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what is this El Nino we keep hearing about in the news. I found this, we've talked about this a little bit before, but I found this really nice graphic, and El Nino and La Nina are just phases of a weather cycle in the Pacific Ocean. You're like, why does this matter to me? The temperature that we see off of the western edge of South America can really impact world weather. It impacts the trade winds, where the jet stream sets up. It can impact hurricane season in the Caribbean, even because of where those systems all develop and start moving. So El Nino is warmer waters off of South America. La Nina is cooler than normal waters off of the Pacific Ocean. And like I said, these shifts drive weather patterns globally. It is something that is an irregular cycle. So it's every 2 to 7 years. It comes in, it comes out. It can go La Nina, neutral, El Nino, neutral, and all these things. A couple of the points about this is that we have been in a La Nina, so cooler than normal waters, for 24 and 25. We are switching. The super El Nino has gotten thrown out because it is swinging back to the other side much more quickly than normal. It's not really hitting a neutral stage. It's going right into that warmer than normal stage. So when looking at El Nino, it tends to be average moisture or maybe slightly less than average moisture for the Midwest in the summer, where La Nina is heavier than normal. It also tends to impact winter more than summer. We could see a warmer and wetter fall and winter than we have the last few years, but we are making that switch globally, and hopefully that benefits us down the road. And why I bring it up is that the last couple years, we've really seen that enhanced wetter, warmer pattern set up. And over the next month, we are going to be hitting in our newsletter lots of the weather patterns, because we need to hit the environment, especially for the disease triangle. We know we have the host here, right? We have corn. That's what we have. We're going to watch for the environment. We're also going to watch for the pathogen and see how it moves. We will work to share you any wind patterns, any notes that we have from additional TAs to the south about pressure, and really work over the month of June to prepare us for that fungicide spray time. So we will be watching for additional humidity, additional rainfall. Where are we setting up compared to 24 and 25 to give you guys the best start on that fungicide season as possible? And you'll notice that when we did our newsletter this week, we did start to include our disease outlooks. These are made by a program called Echo Forecast. They do have 14-day outlooks. We know, even though I maybe misspoke, I do not know the weather for the rest of the summer. I wish I did. I'd sit on a beach and make lots of money. But it's a 14-day outlook. That's our best shot. So we will be sending these regularly. We will watch how that risk factor progresses and moves up through the United States, and make sure that you guys are on top of that. So stay alert, stay flexible. I'm a firm believer that it is easier to cancel a plan than it is to make one when we go, oh, holy Moses, we need to get on that. It's tassel time. Just like Jim said, we're looking at an early tassel setup potentially with the heat units we're in. So as soon as we get done with that post spray, time to start talking about those DELARO complete applications, get those maps in, get organized, because it's just easier to do ahead of time. Moral of the story, and we'll give you as much information as possible going forward to help with that. So I should stop. Dustin and Jim, do you have any comments about weather and disease before I move on?
Well, it's interesting seeing the high risk down there, albeit at the Gulf Coast level for southern rust right now. Doesn't necessarily mean we need to flip out too much, but obviously that's on the radar for everyone. We've got to have several things, like you mentioned, to come together before it is a factor in the upper Midwest. But, once again, we do have higher acreage of corn down there in the south. So we've got that potential, and we will be watching it closely.
Yeah, we had a perfect storm, so to say, last year of how it all lined up to have a huge outbreak of southern rust. But we learned a lot, and now this year trying to be more proactive and really keep a close eye on the movement of it. You're on mute, Nora.
Yep, I'm muted. It gave me the warning, but we'll help you guys as much as possible to give you as much information as possible for disease potential over the next few weeks. But our spotlight product for this week is 10971. It's a runner. It is a top end product. It has some serious yield potential with good emergence. I've had really good emergence notes with it. I have it in some plots and crown rot studies. I've been watching it closely. This is a picture from one of my crown rot studies here, just taken this week. It's beautiful. It's even. I like the color on it. The thing that we're going to watch for is if we get to that southern rust scenario, we're going to spray it. We've learned, just like Dustin said, we learned and we're able to manage going forward. So for something with this much high yield potential, we will add those high management inputs such as DELARO complete and potentially an extra pass depending on what the weather systems, if the triangle, as Dustin says, sets up for that perfect storm. But a lot of yield potential here. Great dry down if it were to be a wetter fall than average. So guys, I will give you your half a credit CEU. We are right on time. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or ending comments?
Yeah, I just hit on the 10971. It has really looked nice out of the ground, walking plots, evaluating emergence. It's had really good emergence. It just needs to be kept on that better acre and managed appropriately. Keep the pops up, keep the nitrogen up, keep all the groceries to it, and it really performs.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely fits in the offensive category, and we do have to be cautious on where we're placing it as we go west because of the Goss's wilt. Always a concern there.
So true. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us today. Have a wonderful spray day. Hopefully nobody gives us any hail calls after the next couple days, but we'll be around if you need us. So have a great rest of your day.